Welcome to this review of Northgard, a real-time strategy game set in a Viking setting with an emphasis on city and resource management. In many ways, you could describe Northgard as playing like a board game. It's very slow-paced and methodical and leans heavily on long-term planning over short-term micromanagement. Each game of Northgard begins with you owning a town hall in a single territory. Your goal is to win through either domination by destroying all the other clans in the game, fame by gaining enough territory and raising your fame through the construction of certain structures and the defeat of certain enemies, or trade by constructing docks and shipping, or wisdom through researching ancient knowledge. Generally, your game plan will be determined from the start. You're going to pick one of these to go towards, and either you're planning on killing anybody or meeting one of those other objectives. There's a wide variety of clans to play, which is really cool, and they all have different bonuses and starting options, which are oftentimes tailored towards a certain victory condition. I found that oftentimes the game was won more by meeting one of those other objectives than actual combat. It's incredibly satisfying when your long-term plans come together to win the game. As you play, you'll expand to other territories which can bring new rewards like new farmland or fishing locations or specific materials like iron or stone, which you'll need later in the game to upgrade your structures. Resources are incredibly important and probably the most important part of this game, so you'll plan your moves ahead of time as you determine what you're planning on doing and building, and failing to do so can really cause some serious economic repercussions. As the game goes through different seasons like winter, which causes less food to be produced but you consume more wood and food, so not carefully planning these different things can really cause serious significant issues that can just completely collapse your civilization. On top of that, people need to be kept happy by upgrading conditions of buildings or offering drinks to please them. Failing to do so will stagnate your growth, as your growth is based on having a high happiness rating. The game does feel a little bit snowball-y though. If you fail to manage just one of these tiny little pieces, like just having enough food or wood, it's like almost impossible to come back as people just start starving and dying and horrible things are happening and everything just falls apart. Over time, you'll gain new citizens at an incredibly slow pace, and this is what really drags the game's pace down to a snail's pace. And I really find this to be the most problematic part of Northgard. Even at the beginning of the game, when there's basically nothing going on because you're just waiting for scouts to uncover new territories and waiting for people to bring in resources, there's just nothing to do. You're basically just sitting there watching people do their jobs, which gets really old after a while. It's kind of cool because they have a lot of interesting animations at first, but after you've already seen them for the 10,000th time, I really don't care. I just want the game to get on and get into the mid and late game. This is all made worse by the fact that each match in this game is like 1 to 3 hours long, so you really have to sit down and dedicate a significant amount of time to just waiting around, waiting for things to happen. Warfare is fairly simplistic in Northgard. You only control about a handful of guys at most, and combat is most of the time determined by focus firing down particular units or composition. Some hero units like your war chief, for example, can use abilities such as fearing enemies to cause them to run away. So these give you some tactical options here and there, but oftentimes I found that most games ended without even having a military conquest due to the fact that you've already gotten your economy rolling, and by the time your army's really built, it's already in the later stages of the game, so the warfare aspect really feels detached from the rest of the game. There is some compositional choices like different units you can build that counter certain units, so there is some element of tactics and strategy there in terms of how you build your army to fight another player, but it's really simplistic in general. Graphically, Northgard is a pleasing game. The terrain is awesome and the people, monsters, and buildings all look great. Both winter and non-winter seasons are captured in gorgeous detail, and it's got an awesome Norse mythological setting to it. The soundtrack is pretty fantastic and well done. There's a campaign that follows the discovery of the new Northgard continent that has basically created a gold rush among the clans to uncover. It's a fairly basic revenge tale that has you working with different clans to uncover and seek your revenge. It's pretty interesting because later on it gives you options to pick what clan you want to play as, so it serves as really an excellent tutorial to the game by gradually introducing you to different win conditions because it'll give you all of them throughout the overall progress of the campaign. The overall story, though, is not that interesting. The dialogue is pretty boring and the characters are really not memorable at all. While I enjoy Northgard a lot, and I do think it has a lot of interesting qualities to it, I also find that Northgard doesn't do enough to really keep me coming back. The game is just too slow for me. The campaign is basic with no memorable lines or characters. The overall gameplay is lacking in variety as well because there's only a handful of real buildings and options to use. While you do have a number of different options for victory, which is really awesome, and I love that there's more than just warfare, it oftentimes feels like there's just not enough to do here and that you're doing the same things over and over again. That isn't to say that Northgard is a bad game. It gets a 7 out of 10, which is slightly above average, and I can highly recommend it to people who like slower-paced games, but I do think that it just does not appeal at all to people who like fast-paced games, and it has a lot of monotony dragged down into it, and as a result, it can get really boring. But it does really appeal to that city building, resource management aspect.